Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ray, and welcome to the RayWenderlich.com podcast. In this podcast, we'll keep you up to date with the latest app development tech talk. Now, here are your hosts, Dru and Nishant Shrivastava.
Thanks, Ray. This is the RayWenderlich.com podcast. Welcome to episode 8 for season 11. Now, this episode was recorded on Wednesday, the 3rd of March, 2021, for the release on the 17th of March. This episode was sponsored by Language and by Numbers. I'm Dru Freeman with my mildly under the weather co-host, Nishant Shrivastava.
Thanks, Dru. We have with us another contributor to the book Living by the Code, Fernando Cejas, who has worn many hats in the tech industry, from being an engineer to a director of mobile, and now head of engineering at Wire. You might also have seen him speaking at conferences because he's also a prolific public speaker.
Fernando, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dru, Nishant, for such a good introduction. I mean, I'm super excited about this, to be honest, and I'm looking forward to, to seeing what comes up out of this. I'm really, really excited.
So are we. Now, if I'm right, are you currently in Germany?
I'm right now, not really. I think we are gonna touch the topic about the pandemic, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I mean, the situation it's overall a little bit complicated. So in my case, I needed to fix some personal stuff. So I'm in Spain. So enjoying the sun as much as I can, as much as the pandemic, lets me.
Are you okay with sheltering at this point? Is everybody in your local group safe and healthy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we need to be responsible, even though it can happen, of course, we're still like facing, so much uncertainty, with this pandemic and this virus and so forth. But fortunately, and knock on wood, everything is safe. I hope the same, on your end, guys.
Thank you so much. So obviously I have to ask, what is it that you miss that is currently off limits? What do you typically do when you're able to get out and enjoy?
I think given the situation, one of the most important things is just turn off your head, some of the stuff that I detected, actually, not even, I mean, now that we're, talking about IT and, mood, right? I mean, we're kind of like, inside all the time because, we know why. But I think like as soon as I have the opportunity to just, get fresh air, I either do sports or, most of the time, some physical activity, just forget about, being inside and again, like turn off my head. That's the most important, I would say.
Yeah, we had an interview this season where they said, I switch off. At the end of the day,
right.
I just completely switch off and it's done.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. It's just, I mean, hopefully, we're gonna get through this pandemic, hopefully, but still, we're facing tons of challenges, and it's so important, mental, healthiness. For me, it's not only, I mean, in order to have, healthy mindset, healthy mind, it's so important to do something physical, at least. We're constantly thinking, and either coding or trying to solve complex problems, and it's just like, you need the other part of the body, to be active, right?
So as for sport, is it football?
No, I mean, to be honest, I do cycling. I would consider myself a frustrated cyclist, like.
Well, why frustrated?
I mean, I would say, like, in the old days when I started, with the sport, I just thought, oh yeah, IT or cycling. No way. Cycling. No, the thing is, like, I always wanted, to be a cyclist. But the thing is, because what I like out of that is just like sometimes you're, you and your bike, alone enjoying some good landscape. It's just like it's the perfect for me. It's the perfect scenario to just not think about anything else. And of course, there's different types of cycling. You can go mountain biking, you can go road cycling, and so forth. Mostly I do road cycling. I try to avoid traffic as much as possible. So but yeah, frustrated. I wish I would be fitter, but yeah, no way. I'm a
The
bad cyclist.
the effective switch off opportunity, like just going out cycling and switching off completely.
Totally, totally,
Oh,
totally.
and I've unfortunately I've never been to Spain. I would just love to see some of the vistas and some of how it looks to just cycle throughout the country.
I think that would be amazing. I mean, I gotta say, like, I'm originally from Argentina, but like
Hmm.
kind of I relocated to Spain, I don't know, many years ago. And then afterwards, I had the opportunity to also live in the US in SF, in the Silicon Valley area. And then I relocated to Germany. So, but still, Spain is kind of like my second home, I would say. I made a lot of friends and I lived here for quite a while. That's why sometimes it's just like, my place to just, get out of my routine and so forth. But
We c-
definitely welcome to that. And there is one trick, try to not eat that much, because food here, it's not only great, but like tons of it. Yeah.
Now you said you
Hard
originally
to
went to
believe.
Spain because of the language barrier was not going to be a problem,
Yep.
but then then English was sort of thrust on you in the industry.
I think, yeah. I mean, you hit the target here. Um, it was exactly like that. I just thought. I mean, I've been studying English for quite a while, as I was a kid, and I was going to the school in Argentina in my little town. But still, if you don't practice, if you don't talk, in the
Mhm.
end, it's like nothing. I mean, you get the theory, and then I just said. I mean, maybe a good starting point, would be some place where I'm familiar with the language, and then as I always say, like start simple and move towards complexity, right? And
Mhm.
then that was the natural path to me. Just I started to develop myself to communicate better and so forth, and it's actually part of our job. We need to constantly communicate and so forth. Yeah.
So being immersed in English, um, how was that learning process?
Hmm. I think let me tell you, an experience here. I think like when sometimes we fall into the trap of the bias. Like
Hmm.
especially it's exactly the same with each specific language. Like sometimes when you hear someone that is not native and it sounds sometimes like I not native, and you're kind of a little bit biased. So it was actually really, I was actually really struggling with it because in the beginning, you cannot be so fluent, you cannot express yourself the way you would like to, and it's just like frustrating actually, not being able to properly say what you want. And I think like I'm very grateful with many people that I was surrounded by that helped me really with this. They were patient, they were understanding me, they were helping and saying, hey Fernando, look, maybe you can communicate this way or that way. And I think I also part of that, as you know, I wanted to speak at conferences as well,
Hmm.
and I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and not only be attached to Spanish speaking conference, right? And
Yeah.
I think that pushed me, a little bit, towards this direction and said, okay, let's do it, you know? Yeah, that
Now,
was
That's
pretty much.
oops, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Now, you've also now moved to Germany. Are you also now fluent in German?
Whoa. what a question. I would say I'm getting there, I would say. I mean, I was always a strong believer of like learning languages. I mean, sometimes, to be honest, I'm in Berlin, I'm based in Berlin. So, I mean, with all the stuff we're doing, all the stuff we're working on, you actually don't need, we know that, IT mostly is English,
It's
I
mostly
mean,
English.
all the documentation, even when we go deeper, I mean, all the programming languages, are based on the English language, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so I would say I would not need it, but for me, it's again like getting out of the comfort zone. And if you want to
Mhm.
integrate yourself into the culture, you want to learn, you know, how people work, it's trust, that it's not the same, right? I mean, when you approach someone from Germany in English and when you approach someone from Germany in German, even though it's completely broken, but still you're putting this effort, you learn a little bit more about their culture, I mean, the language is an essential part of or of any culture,
Mhm.
Yeah. The thing about the Berlin though, like I'm also based in Berlin, and the thing about Berlin though is that because this is like a thing that everyone kind of speaks English. So if you try speaking, say, a bit of a German, and they see that you're struggling, they switch to English, and then like the conversation doesn't happen in German anymore. So that's something that I've also experienced. But obviously, as you mentioned, actually a lot of people whom I talk to, they have been very patient, and they actually try to stick to German if the other person is trying to learn German. So that's something that's a very good point that you've actually brought up. This is a thing that's happening all over the world. I think when the languages are not the same.
Right. I think
Very
like you know what I'm talking about, and it's entirely true what you're saying. But yeah, again, and it's, by the way, it's not an easy to learn language, it's Germanic, and some of the stuff comes out of English, but Germans, but you establish your own rules, and sometimes like
Just assume the verb is at the end of the sentence and you're doing
right.
fine.
Right.
yeah.
The store will go.
Yeah.
There's a joke that I know that people talk about, that because the language is structured in a certain way, is that you wait for the person who is speaking German and for them to finish the sentence before you can actually answer something. So you literally wait for them to finish the sentence and then you can answer it. You cannot stop them midway through. So it's like
Exactly.
it's a joke, but it's true. People say it as a joke, but
No,
it's true. Like you need to wait to listen to the full sentence before you can get the meaning out of it.
Exactly.
I have an appreciation coming from my general interest. I took Japanese, which is about as far different a language from English as one can get. And there are certain constructions that are, you have to think in the language. You can't translate on the fly in your head. You have to absorb it and fully understand it. And I think that's part of the culture, is that you understand how to think in a language, not just speak in a language.
Definitely, definitely. May I ask, do you keep track of how many kanjis you have learned, or do you have any idea? Okay, cool. So
I haven't begun to master the kanji yet. No.
right,
No.
for all the people who are not looking, at the video, like
Yeah, I
Drew
said
Freeman.
three. Three, that's about it.
I have a bit of exposure to Japanese. I was doing something related to that, and
Oh,
I must say that language is, I mean, it is a very, I'd say, expressive language, but like for a person who doesn't speak it natively, it is hard to learn. So I sympathize with Drew.
Very, very,
I
very
think it
poetic.
is hard. Yes.
oh my God, yeah.
All
Funny
right.
stuff.
So you commented that you knew you wanted to do public speaking.
Yep.
And one of the things that you pointed out that I really appreciated, and we've been talking about public speaking a lot throughout the season. Um, a lot of people feel that bite to go do public speaking, but you pointed out that it's important that it's something that comes from within, not something you're being pushed toward.
Yep. Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. You want to comment about that?
Yeah. No, I think you know, it as you mentioned, you should feel it. For me, it's just, the need of communicating, the need of sharing. Like for me, sharing is so important, and and most of the time, to be honest, I mean, I'm sharing mostly my mistakes, the lessons learned, and I think that's the most valuable stuff, or the most valuable feedback I collect, from the audience, when they're listening to me and they just say, Fernando, whoa, that was nice. Well, you have no idea how much I struggle to get there. But I think for me, um, it's also, this is a personal opinion. I was always educated by my parents, to express myself, to not be shy. I mean, I also can understand that some people are introverted. Like in our area, it's a common, I would say, pattern, I would say, to see people that are introverted, that they struggle to speak and they struggle to communicate properly. And sometimes it could be the language barrier, or sometimes their natural behavior, right? And for me, maybe, at least, I was always curious about that. When I was in high school, I wanted to always share and be in front of people, speaking and so forth. I had to say that I also evolved over the years, because I had this profile of being a little bit introverted at some point, especially when you start, like, doing all this nerdy stuff. Like, for you, it's easier to communicate with computers rather than with human beings, right? And it's just like, at some points, you just you know look at yourself and say, like, whoa, I've been talking to computers for a week and I haven't interacted with any human being. Is what's out there. But yeah, that's why I think it should come out natural. You can be prepared for that. You can prepare yourself. I always try to mentor people. I have a lot of advice in this field, especially coming from the experience, how I evolved, and how I learn. I'm not saying I still make tons of mistakes. There's always room for improvement and learning. But like, when I look at myself and compare who I was, I don't know, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and look at myself right now, I mean, I couldn't believe, that actually I'm here right now, talking to both of you, and it's part of the evolution, and it's something I love, by the way.
I appreciate the failure is always an option. You stress that the best way to learn is to make the mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, you need to minimize mistakes, right? I mean, in our area, most of the time when I'm talking about mistakes, it's just not only, computing problems, it's also, attitudes that you might have had, that might have caused, some friction, or, I also had to say that, that's, you know, having this, human values is part of my personality as well. And I think I cannot be more grateful with my parents for, educating me in this way, but the mistakes are there, and they should be taken as lessons learned, and we should never always learn out of them and share them.
Mhm.
So, especially to avoid other people to hit, their head against a brick wall, as you did. So, and there should be always, room for making mistakes. We should not be afraid of that. In whichever situation we are, whichever environment we are, there should be always room for making mistakes, without finger pointing, you know without having the chance to just share the lesson learned, and trying to minimize them, of course. And that's the reason why you share, so other people know that you, I don't know if I can say fuck it up. But sorry, I already said it.
So let's back up to the fact that we're all sort of trapped where we are right now,
Yep.
and we're hoping that this will pass soon. you are now, and most of us now are remote workers.
Yep.
You're very strongly a proponent of remote work.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I always thought, I mean, um, it's challenging, but I think, I mean, especially in our area, there's, I mean, I had to say, like, of course, there's pros and cons of, both approaches, being on site somewhere in an office, or, being at home or anywhere, but I like flexibility, and one of the things I have to say, like, if I were, leading some place or a company or something, I would go all in remote or all in, on site, because I don't think this hybrid model of having like some people remote and some people inside, I mean, in my experience at least, I fail so many times, especially remote workers, when they feel isolated, and that it's easier to approach someone right next to you, rather than, I don't know, open a communication tool and just pinging someone to just discuss something. So I'm a big defender of remote work. You had to be careful if you're in a leadership position as well, because remote also means, less contact. You might be doing micromanagement sometimes, sometimes you see some lack of trust, remote, has pros and cons, in this sense.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the point also that the pandemic has kind of changed the landscape for the remote working as we see it now. It's at some point it had a certain definition, and now the definition has kind of changed.
Exactly. Um, it's a good point. I mean, um, personally, I think, it's good for this approach, for remote working. I mean, I wish, that would have happened, without the pandemic, right? I mean, now we are seeing, companies moving towards this direction, right? But also it brought up other problems when it comes to remote working. And one of those is, like, as I mentioned, what I've seen in my experience, micromanagement. Also, again, another point, as I mentioned before as well, was the mood of the people, like, yeah, we're kind of like, we feel, that we're, stuck in one place. We feel this lack of freedom somehow. And especially, I mean, for example, people who are parents, and because schools are closed and they had to take care of their kids. So when you're in a leadership position, you had to struggle with all these situations. I mean, you had to be fully flexible. You had to, like, at least in my case, it's just like, you know, pretty much do whatever you want, like, I mean, we understand the situation, always prioritize life over work in the end, believe in the
Yeah.
good intentions of people, and trust, and that's why for me it's important to keep these human values and to transmit, as a leader, um, this what you want to cultivate, in this sense. But again, it's still a challenge, not because of the remote work itself, but also because of the situation that brings up other thoughts and so forth. Yeah, that's my 2 cents, I would say. Yeah.
I have a
There's,
question
go ahead.
on this. I have a question on this. So you mentioned that there's like some of these aspects that you mentioned that have come up, such as like the assessing the mood and trust, or and other such, I would say, not quantifiable aspects. Um, I'm not quite sure how this will work in the current remote setup. Like, how do you do, based on your experience, how do you actually tackle these challenges where you actually are not able to judge the mood of of your
Of course.
colleagues over a video call? So, like, what would you maybe suggest or recommend to handle those situations?
I mean, I tried, personally, my I think, like, one of the most underrated stuff that we get is like the one-on-ones, and I use this space for that. Like, one-on-ones themselves are not for, talking about work. It's not a status report meeting. It's just like, let's talk, human being to human being, how can I help? I think like also what it comes into play here is the fact that you should kind of learn how to psychological, I wouldn't say how to handle this kind of situation psychologically speaking, like in the sense, trying to be all the time approachable, hey, if you have a problem, I'm there for you, please, I mean, you don't have to go through this, we're gonna get it there, forget about deadlines, forget about work. I mean, we're facing this situation, and that's it, take your time if you need it, and also like, bringing support in this sense, I mean, I would never say, hey, take your time, but please, we're gonna, take them from your vacation. Not at all, because I think, there is way more after work, and for me, it's just, again, like I would always prioritize personal life, and so forth over any professional life. And we're trying to be good professionals, but I think part of that is also to understand other people, and understand ourselves, and also apply those things to ourselves as well. Yeah, but one-on-ones could be a good candidate.
There's an asynchronicity that you have to really fall into in a fully remote situation, because not everybody is going to be sitting at that desk in front of that alert. So that the concept of I need to talk to you in 5 minutes is really sort of fading away into here's our current situation, please get back to me. And do you see this asynchronicity being positive? Do you see it becoming a detractor?
I mean, like we know that, asynchronous stuff and multi-threading is always complicated, right? So it doesn't matter, like you never learn how to manipulate threads properly, even though you're 20 years, manipulating threads. No, just, out of the joke. I think I see that, Drew, definitely. And it's something that, you as a leader, you have to also communicate, to the other moving parts in an organization. Everyone should be aligned on this, and there's, strategies. For example, I mean, we try to at least be 1 hour, only 1 hour, all together for, I don't know, some stuff, that we want to, solve, or we want to talk about, or whatever, right? But if that's not possible, I mean, we relied on synchronous tooling, like, I don't know, just leave an email. We try to figure out ourselves, that way. We understand that we might get blocked, sometimes, but as soon as you properly communicate this, there's nothing to be, afraid about, and afraid of, sorry. And it's something, again, like understanding this specific situation, with everything that comes with it, right? But yeah, it's an issue, I would say, between quotes, but again, I mean, not a big deal, to be honest. Not a big deal. There's other people also, the people who are, probably not being parents, or like no parents, or people who had like more time, or and so forth. I mean, if you cultivate a culture of helping each other and so forth, it's like there's nothing to worry about, because they will understand and will say, forget about that, I can cover you, just go home. We all cultivate the same culture. That's why it's important to be aligned, and to have like human values that everyone understands in a specific organization.
So let's be a little more specific here, for you. We talked about how when you are cycling, you're switched off. When you're done, you're switched off. But being a fully remote developer, you wake up and your office is pretty much next to where you're sleeping. How do you keep your discipline throughout the day?
Well, I think this is also a lesson learned, and I think I talk about it in one of my talks, because I think I remember like back in the days when it was not only about like there was no pandemic, fortunately, and so forth, but I became for the first time a freelancer, and you work from home, and I was not, I was working, with projects, in other countries and so forth. And it was such, I'm pretty sure that many people will identify themselves with this situation. It was exactly like that. You would be within your pajamas, and working all day long, and then you would not even realize, if it was the morning, if it was like, I don't know, noon time, and at some point this is, what am I doing? So from this
Yes.
lesson learned, it took me some time to figure that out, to be honest. I started, in the beginning going to co-working cafes, but like now it's not possible. So for me, it's like I created a tiny routine. I wake up, I get my coffee, my tea, whatever. I put on you know my clothes, my proper clothes, not no pajamas and so forth. And then something that I'm also doing is like switching places inside, and I have my alarm. For example, I don't know, at 12 I just said, yeah, lunchtime. That's for sure. And I think I try to create this routine, and I know that at 5 o'clock, or sometimes if I want to go cycling, I have this flexibility, fortunately. And it's also something I transmit as well. It's part of our culture. And then I just take off and say, today it's a good day. I don't need to do this, forget about it, and that's it. But creating a routine, it's such a trick, and being strict with it, I would say.
Well,
I will say the strict part is important because discipline is hard to maintain.
Exactly. I guess you suffer from the same situation as well, Nishan, or what?
I've tried. I would say I think I do a good job of sticking to it, but I also am not very strict. So I sometimes would falter around it. Like for example, sometimes I might work more than the set time that I have. Say for example, shutting myself down. So in that sense, that's what I said. Like when you say strict words, that's the important part here. It's very nice that you mentioned exactly how you set your day around it. I think I might try it out. That's it's interesting.
Oh,
and your
please.
and your chapter says you use Pomodoro.
I do. I do. I
You want to
think
explain? You want to explain Pomodoro just for people who are
I mean, yeah, of
unfamiliar?
course. I can provide some context. I think like, also I'm pretty sure you identify yourself with the situation as well, procrastination. So sometimes, you had to solve a complex problem, or you had to work, or you had to do anything, you need focus. And then, you realize that you ended up like looking at the fly over there, on the wall for 15 minutes. And it's like such an interesting insect, and this kind of thing. So, I mean, that's on one hand. I tried to be, again, strict, and I had to create my, be, have discipline with it. But Pomodoro is a technique that, you pretty much set up, slots of time, 5 minutes, times, windows of time that, I mean, you can set it up the way you want. For me, what works most of the time, like, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes. Then I would say sometimes 10, whatever. But then in between, you set up also a slot. I think that the standard is like 15, 15, 15, 5 minutes rest up,
Like,
15, 5 minutes rest up, 15, 5 minutes rest up, and I think 25 minutes, and then you have like 15 minutes rest up. But I set it up my way to just, fulfill everything in an hour to,
mhm.
so I have like 10 minutes, 7 minutes or something like that. Then my last session would, be at, when an hour is done, um, it's gone. So I think it makes you focus. I mean, it forces you. You have to, forget about interruptions. Just turn off your mobile phone. There's apps that can help you out with that. if you're using Linux or Mac, Pomodoro, just search for that. It might turn off your notifications and so forth, so you can focus. The hard part is like when you have in the interruption itself. We are all using, you know, um, so real-time communication tools like chats and so forth. So either you turn off the notification, but if you're in an office, yes, we used to be, then you have to be also strict and say, okay, sorry, um, I will get back to you. Another trick is like, you know that there is a proportional relationship with the size of your headphones, and not being disturbed. So so
Yes.
just acquire, huge headphones, and then people will realize, whoa, that's respect. So
I
Yeah.
have it. I'm showing my headphones that I use when I want my son not to bother me. And
so,
but
oh, that
while I'm recording the series, I have the tiny little earbuds, which of course say bother me repeatedly.
right.
This is a very unique thing that you mentioned, and one thing that I've also seen as an alternative that has worked in the past for me when we were actually sitting in the office is that people would actually wear some unique hats. So say, like, say someone is wearing a cowboy hat, someone is wearing, like, I don't know, like a Pokemon hat or something, and that basically says this guy is in, or this girl is in, say, specific focus mode. You don't disturb them. So if you don't want to, like, just get the headphones, get the hat. So much better.
That's awesome. I mean, let me add, build a little bit on top of that, because we had a very interesting project at a company actually. So you had like a canyon, right next to you, that by just pressing the button, the canyon would point at you if someone is just coming over and you're in a Pomodoro session, and that came
Okay.
out of another project, with the Jenkins CI. If you would break the build, the canyon would just, point at you. It was in the middle,
Like
you know,
real life get blame.
exactly.
Looking
It's
at
just
you.
like, who, you, finger pointed, no finger pointed at all, but like the canyon was pointed at you. Oh, funny stories.
You have been speaking a lot, and I am curious what it was that bit you. What was it that made you say, I want to do speaking?
Right. So I think, I mean, that came out of open source. I was always, a strong believer on open source. I've been contributing as much as I could, even in the early days, with Linux, doing some, subversion stuff, the old days, like huge projects, and subversion is like conflicts all over the place. So, you know and again, the same concept, it was about sharing. And I think that made me think, how can I transmit even more, not code, but also, how can I you know reach out more people, and it was also at some point in my timeline. I was working at, SoundCloud company, a music platform. And then I've been always contributing to open source. I've been always speaking at conferences and again, sending copy for papers all over the place and so forth. And then I just said, why not turning this into my, day-to-day job? It's just like, maybe it's interesting to explore, this opportunity and say, hey, why not? I mean, you're enjoying, and it's nice. I had to tell you that I got really, really cool stuff out of that. I mean, the experience was tremendous, but then there's some drawbacks as well. I also had gotta say, now that we're all remote, it's easier. I think new ideas should come over because you don't have the audience in front of you, and one of the things that I'm missing is
Yes.
exactly that. I For me, the most valuable part is not actually giving the talk itself. It's just talking to people afterwards. and getting questions and asking questions, sharing, going for a beer, grabbing a coffee, whatever. So I think yeah, definitely there's drawbacks. At some point I just said I'm traveling too much, um, and and sometimes you end up, I mean, I guess, if you can combine it, with your actual work, and you can pick, the conference you want to attend, and you can, if you can kind of build up your schedule based on, what you want to do. I think
Yeah.
it's nice. But then at some point I found myself, yeah, I like sharing, but I'm living in a hotel. I've been living in a hotel for for months. Um, but definitely up for that. Definitely up for that. It's something that I strongly recommend to everyone to just do that. I hope that we're back, you know, to the real conference. I appreciate all the efforts being done as well. It's just wanted to, um, to give a shout out to all the organizers right now, putting an extra effort to organize, such good conferences and so forth. But feedback collected is not the same. It's not the same. Yeah.
No.
You mentioned something about like doing this as your day-to-day job, but I'm guessing this is something related to your time at IBM. Is this when you actually switched into some different role?
Yeah, exactly. So, um, I mean, just to give you a little bit more insights on that, I mean, I was lacking, working for a big corporation. I wanted to also see from the inside how a huge corporation with 500,000 people, working there, how that works. Um, and also I was interested in quantum computing. So I'm I like I like I like quantum physics. I'm still lacking, the mathematical part. I don't have it's such a deep understanding, but I read a lot about particles and models and so forth. That I was interested in that. And if you want to do that, I mean, at this point in time, you have, you don't have a lot of options, right? I mean, you have only the big players, either Google, IBM, Microsoft is doing something in this field. So it was an opportunity for me to do two things, on one hand, become a developer advocate, on the other hand, do something related to quantum computing, which was mostly research. But then of course, I ended up, doing some mobile, because that's my, area of expertise, I would say, at this, at, the time. Um, and also, like, I ended up like doing some serverless and so forth, some of this stuff. um, but that's pretty much, yeah, that was the story behind, my adventure at IBM. Yeah.
You mentioned developer advocacy, but for our listeners, can you like kind of give a brief introduction to what this job role actually has to do?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I think, I mean, um, according to my experience, many different organizations define the role in different ways, right? I mean, we face that with every single position. What for one
Mhm.
organization something, means something, for the other it means the opposite. But in terms of, there's some general ideas, and becoming a developer advocate means to create connections with developers. There might be some kind of product platform that, you one thing just to make clear here is to not confuse a salesperson, sorry, salesperson with a
Mhm.
developer advocate. Because, to be honest, I mean, that's not one core responsibility of the developer advocate. You need to promote, you need to learn how to teach how to use a specific product or platform. You collect a lot of feedback from developers using this specific product or platform, and then you translate that, to fix stuff, to improve, and so forth. So, it also means, to be honest, for me, and this is also like a tiny story. I don't think I will be hired by IBM anymore after I tell you this, but but it's sorry. I mean, I like to be honest, and many times it happened that I was not believing in some of, their products. And I was completely honest. I'm not lying. I don't want to lie to anyone. And to be honest, many people came over and said like, hey, there was a tricky question. Why I should do this specific product from IBM? So, no, don't use it. And it's just like really, when you think, okay, this is our developer advocate, but it's not about that. It's about what you believe in, and there's nothing to hide. The same way I believed in other areas, in other products that I think were really good, and they were encouraging open source and so forth. But other products for me were, no, just go to the competitor because you will get this and that. And someone I remember at a conference, we were providing some trial accounts, this kind of how you say, this kind of
Promotion,
special
promotional
promotions.
based. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And someone just like, but you know, if you a developer came over and just I gave him one of these. I mean, and I told him, you can use IBM servers, for a month. And then this person told me, but you told me that the competitors could be better, for my use case. And it's like, okay, yeah, but you can use it, I don't know, for Bitcoin mining, just do something like that. And it was like it was this kind of funny stories in the end. I was always transparent with them as well, that it's a joke that I did, within the team as well. So yeah, I mean, there's no perfect solution. Each specific use case requires the right tool.
I guess
So that,
what you are
that was,
I just wanted to add, maybe, like, I guess what maybe you are trying to say is that as a developer advocate, you personally wanted to have a connect with the product, and that would probably have brought more, I don't know, like in general, would have brought
yeah.
more functionality out, and maybe like discussion with other people when you were at conferences or something.
Exactly. That was about
Okay.
feedback, collecting feedback, and then in order to make the product better, and like sometimes, many people would come up with very interesting questions and very interesting use cases. And then it might make you think, about like, whoa, maybe we can go, this direction, because we haven't thought about this, this specific use case. I mean, of course, you cannot cover everything, but that was part of my job, to be honest. And it was also about promotion without selling. It's just like you promote a new functionality because you believe in that, because it came, most of the time it would come out of some feedback that you had collected at some conference, or through some blog post comments and so forth. And then you would promote that. Okay, so we are fulfilling a use case here. How would you use this platform? How would you implement the solution to this, to your use case? And I think it was mostly about that. And I got to know tons of people, tons of interesting people. um, I remember, like, even giving a talk, my first talk about quantum computing. I got the chance to talk about quantum computing, and it was very challenging because I was on stage, and I needed to provide an introduction to quantum physics, because quantum computers were based on quantum physics, right?
Yeah.
And then I asked, is there any theoretical scientists here? And there were like 5 or 6, and it was just like they were sitting right, you know sorry guys, sorry. Don't believe everything I tell here. Just please give me feedback, because I'm pretty sure I might say things that you're not even familiar with, or they're stuff that came out of nowhere. you know but yeah, funny stories a lot, gotta say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as developer advocate, you basically are sort of hanging up being a coder.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. That's something that you need to keep fresh. Um, Sometimes we think, as IT professionals, I would say that the natural path is, you know, um, going towards management, right? I mean, it's like, but my advice here would be never stop coding. Like, I mean, we definitely need to be in touch with the technology, because part of the leadership is understanding developers. And even though you were a developer, but you need to keep in touch. And part of your responsibility is not only to transmit, as a developer, but also write, technical blog posts, and in order to write technical blog posts, you might have an example, which, is somewhere, in the GitHub repo, for example. And then in order to do that, you need to code. So that's definitely a must, I would say. Yeah. Have you guys like, are you still coding? Like, by the way, just out of
Yes.
curiosity.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not coding as much as I used to. I'm a lead architect now, but we're I mean, there's always a call saying, how am I going to deal with this and what do I have to do? And first the problem solving level and then the actual coding level comes.
Right.
So
But you're still, I mean, your position lets you like be, in touch with the technology itself,
oh yeah,
like,
I actually still can look at the code and
right.
open it up and stare at it and go, I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but
Right. And you,
but hey,
Nishan?
I was one of the architects on it, so I must know what's going on somehow.
Right.
That's universal, I would say. It's there for forever. Like even if you become a lead architect, if you're an engineer, and like even director or head of engineering, I guess.
Yeah.
Like if you open up code, you're always like, do I understand this?
Right. And
And and
sometimes,
then you and then you check, and then it's you who wrote the code 3 months back. So that's the
So
thing.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I had to say, like, I've been trying to keep myself fresh, with coding. Um, but I cannot, the same as you, Drew, I cannot, do it as often as I used to. But still, it's pretty sad when you open the IDE or your text editor, and it's just like, how do I write a for loop? It's just like, need to search for that.
it's usually
Just
repeat and while that get me.
right, exactly. It's just like, I mean, the IDD is telling me it's marking this in red. That is, what is that? Where is this variable?
See, that's why I wound up in iOS and Swift, because at least that way, if I forget semicolons, I'm still okay.
There you go. That's smart.
So
Yeah,
I want to talk about some of the books that have influenced you. Or actually, I don't want to talk about some of them. I appreciate you calling up Clean Code by Uncle Bob and the refactoring by Martin Fowler, but the one that caught my eye, of course, was El Principito. Uh,
Right.
which is actually that was the first time I'd heard the Spanish title. I'm familiar, of course, with Le Petit Prince or the Little Prince. Why? Can you talk about that book? Because we'll definitely put a link to it in the notes. But this is a special book. I think anybody who touches the book is touched by the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the story, the storytelling of the book, I remember like when I first read it, sometimes we think that it's, a book for kids, and it's not, and you read it. I mean, the storytelling, and I had to read it again, later, so it was, I think like in, when I was, I don't know, 8 years old or something, I wanted to read it because everyone was talking about this book, in my family, and said like, hey, you should read it, Fernando, at some point, whatever. So challenge accepted. I did not understand, but I think it's, I mean, I don't want to spoil much, because I think it's something, that you had to do it, and it's a very short one, I think, like, but the storytelling itself, it's so interesting,
Mhm.
the I would say the story, I mean, give you a lot, I mean, I felt definitely identified by this book, and let me leave it there. I definitely
the
want to
suspense.
encourage.
Yes.
I definitely want to encourage people to just, read it, and then I'm super happy to just, comment on this, and say like, okay, let's talk about the book, how you felt, because I have my own feelings, and it's something I think I read it, I don't know, like 4 or 5 times already. And now that you brought it up, I think like, I think it's the time to get back to it.
Yeah,
Couldn't
because
agree more than
Nishant was not familiar with it.
I have not read it. I am definitely going to read this though.
But
Oh,
it's incredibly short. You'll be
yeah.
surprised how fast it flies by and how much it sticks to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the most interesting part, because it's something that you will never forget. It's just like it's the way, the storytelling is just, I don't know. It's tough to explain, and I think you had to experience yourself. Nishan, if you go for it, like let's grab a virtual coffee at some point, just talk about the book. Sorry to the audience, go for it as well. I'm not gonna spoil you. Good one, Drew, that you brought it up, and let's
Well,
see what happens.
yeah, I saw that in your chapter, and it immediately jumped out at me because, like I said, it's a book that once you touch it, it touches you.
Yeah, exactly. The better description ever. Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you have
definitely.
any others that are non-tech that you
I mean,
recommend?
most of the time, I mean, I read, I like, crime stories, and crime books, but I cannot remember one specific one, because most of the time I had to say like, in the last couple of years, I haven't read many books. I mean, I've been reading cycling books, for example, and it's mostly, again, like, this frustration. Sorry for bringing it up again, but frustration, and that explains why I'm frustrated, because I'm just trying to
we
understand
we get
when
your
more.
affinity towards cycling. I think it
Yes,
is going to pump us to do that too.
I
right,
have I have that book on my shelves. It's an art book that teaches me how to draw a specific style of art that I've never been able to quite understand. And I go back to that book about every 2 to 3 years to frustrate myself again on how much I just have not grasped some little secret that'll eventually pop out of that book.
oh my God, yeah. What it's called?
It's called the Bane. I can't even remember. I refer to it as the damn Bane book because it's how the art in the Book of Kells was done.
God, nice.
It's very beautiful knotwork, but it's also a very complex system.
Right. I think I think we're discovering our frustrations, our hidden frustrations here in this podcast or this video, right? I mean, I'm curious about yours, Nishan, then right now. Bring it
I
up.
am I am mostly going through, I would say, Zoom fatigue, as you call it. I've stopped reading. I'm the person who is experiencing the remote work in a very different direction. So I'm actually happy getting recommendations for books because I might just you start using them and then get rid of watching the screens all the time. That is what I'm gonna
Right.
do.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I think I had to say like, even if it's technical, but my favorite device is it's a Kindle. It's my Kindle, like, because it's so easy to just take it with me anywhere, and just it's I have like tons of book, lately, again, tech books. Also, I studied, what is the name is, the art of not giving a fuck.
Yes.
So I think that's promising. I got to say, I just started. I think it's 2 or 3% on. It's a bit long, and the other one is Sapiens. So another promising one. Um, but yeah, again, and I don't know, like, and let me ask you a question then, because I don't want to feel alone in this one, but does it happen to you that you have like so many open books, and then it's like, oh crap, 10, 12 books at
and
5%?
and not just books, but audiobooks on top
Yeah,
of that.
Yes,
exactly.
I was gonna say that.
I'm in the process of trying to read Dune for about the 15th time.
Oh God.
Trying to. Again, that's another frustration book.
it's a forever struggle, and in my case, this is why I said that I've actually stopped reading, is because when you say that you have read like say 10 or 15 books, like that's 5 or 15% read. Because when I try to get back, I'm like, maybe I don't remember as much, so let me start from the scratch, and then I have to cover up again. And so I was like, okay, I'm maybe just gonna stop and then do one book at a time. So this is
Right.
why all the recommendations that you are right now giving me, and as well as Drew is giving me, I'm all happy to put them in a list, but I'm gonna go through them one at a time.
And now
You see,
you've got e-reader curse there, that you're saying I've gotten through 8% of a book. Not I'm on chapter 3, but I'm through this percent.
right, exactly, exactly. I think like sometimes you're like constantly seeing like, whoa, I have achieved, a 2 extra% here, like it's like that.
But
But
in the
yeah, I
same
mean,
chapter.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But I think like this is another good point, because we were talking about discipline, and I think like sometimes I think I'm disciplined for other things, for other, but I'm so bad at keeping one task at a time. And we said that multi-threading and multitasking is a complex thing, right? It's complicated, whatever you're trying to do.
Well, I have to admit, this has been a fun season because we've been doing a lot of soft skills. This is a hard show to do during our tech season because we'll talk about a tech and then we'll talk about another tech 2 weeks later and another tech 2 weeks later. And I'm like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to learn
Yeah,
Flutter in my spare time that I don't have any of.
right. You're right. I can
Every
imagine.
episode brings new skill set, Drew, and then
E-
like he's
Every
basically putting.
episode. But I've
Absolutely.
been getting a lot out of these, especially as we talk about things like public speaking, because I absolutely adore doing public speaking, and I haven't really gotten into doing public speaking in the con circuit. It's just something that I don't know if I haven't really felt anything to put out there yet, or the like.
Right.
But having the podcast is sort of
Yeah.
my way of doing it for now.
I would say so. Like when we talk about sharing, there's so many different ways of sharing, of interacting, like either you do it, via a talk, via a podcast, via a blog post. I always encourage people. I mean, we had to build up a team of developer advocates, and there were some people who were not even interested in giving a talk, and being on stage. They were mostly interested in writing technical blog posts, technical writing, and even or doing a podcast, instead of like doing something live and whatever. So I think like anything that we do, as soon as we're sharing, as soon as we're interacting, it's a plus one, I would say. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we are
Yeah.
definitely in a society of content creation now, and I think that's essential. Is that we have so many different venues that we didn't have as recent as 20 years ago. I mean, there's YouTube for to see some of these chats that we haven't been able to see, the blogs that are infinitely spread out and dispersed now. We talked in previous episodes about sketchnoting, which is an incredible way to grasp concepts in a very creative manner. And I'm
Mm,
just so thrilled with the depth and the breadth of
mm.
content creation that is now available.
I think like, I mean, let me raise 2 points here that now that you mentioned. The first one is like, we should never be consumed by content creation. This is something that I'm seeing constantly, especially with newcomers to this area, because there's so much content being generated all the time, and sometimes we want to be there, and sometimes you're wondering, wow, how do these people you know do, like they're always using the latest state of the art technology. They're always constantly up to date, and then should I be there? Should I spend all my time doing? No. The answer is no.
Yeah,
uh,
it's
yeah, go.
interesting because I had somebody come up to me, where I lived a long time ago and say, well, I need to have an app. And I said, well, what's
Right.
your business? Does your business call for an app? And it was that concept of, well, don't put the cart before the horse. You know, if you want to create content, if people ask me, how do I become a podcaster? And my response is always, podcasting's easy. Coming up with the material, that's the hard part. If you have
There you
material to put out there, the rest is cakewalk. And I think I wanted to podcast for years, but I just didn't have anything until this opportunity came along.
exactly. Because I mean, I'm pretty sure we all, the three of us, has, I don't know, have I don't know, like maybe 30, 40 tabs open, in our browsers,
Yes.
waiting to be read. And it's just like, and we are piling them up.
30 or 40 tabs. That's mine. How about the rest of it?
I use this extension called One Tab. So what it does is that when you click it, it actually takes all these tabs and puts them in one particular tab, right? And the list
Oh,
keeps on growing every time you do it. So the idea is that you will go back and then you will kind of open them and read it and then do it. I think as of now, I think my number of items in that list is like more than 5,000. So it doesn't work.
I remember writing a hack for my browser that would actually convert all my tabs to an OPML file.
oh God.
So
How
that
many of those did you have?
oh God, at that point I had like 12 windows with each about 10 to 12 tabs each. But the OPML file was very nicely formatted and everything else so that I could then just open it in HTML and say, oh, look, that's what I was reading.
Right. Oh God. Whoa. Oh, nice one. Yeah, I think, getting back to the topic, there's what is interesting is the content itself, right? I mean, we should definitely try, to read what is meaningful for us, and because, I always say that time is something that we cannot recover. It's the only thing probably we cannot recover. Lost, if we've lost, I don't know, 10 minutes, I mean, we're not gonna get them back, under
Yeah.
any circumstance. And related, the other point that I was wanting to bring up, when it comes to all this content, even websites like Stack Overflow nowadays, it's pretty easy, I would say, to find a solution. Just do some Stack Overflow driven development, right? And it's just like, it's easy as that, right? And
The thing.
but yeah, but I think like you also might have experienced, I remember like the old days when you had like the Bible of Java, and it was like 1,000 pages book, yeah. And then there's like, and then you're coding something, and you get like an issue or something, and you get like a huge stack trace, and like, where should I go now? should I grab the Bible of Java 1 and start
Yeah.
like going through the pages, and this old days, they were amazing too, huh? Right?
I think my bookshelf is there now just to remind me what life used to be like.
Right.
Before
Because I
before
have books
Stack
on there.
Overflow.
I have books on my bookshelf that are for operating systems that are long since dead.
Whoa, yeah.
I mean, I've been in the industry
Yeah,
since whenever, and I started on computers very young
yeah.
and very early. So I'm not ashamed of my Apple programming manual.
Whoa. Manual. I don't want to see how big that was.
The original Apple OS for the Apple II, it was a spiral bound book that was only about this thick. But then again, you
Okay.
also have to remember that the original Apple OS didn't even have floating point arithmetic. So it was pretty much just a basic interpreter.
Right. And such a book for interpreter. Yeah, such a manual, let's say, right?
Yes.
Oh my God, yeah, those days. I mean, I remember like not a long time ago, because I don't I wish I would be more like you, Drew, but like I store them, and boxes, and I remember like when you move, somewhere else, it's like you realize how much stuff you collected, and especially
Yes.
books. And I found one. I remember like in the old days, I wanted to be a designer as well, and I found some book related to Corel Draw. I don't know if you remember that
Yes, I've
Corel.
used that. It
Were
was a
there
full
two
suite.
editions?
It
And you
was
keep
before Adobe came through. So
and you
basically,
keep
it was a full suite.
you keep them even though they're no longer of any use whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'm gesturing in the video version of this, which is fine because we're after the 45 minutes. But these are Apple programmer manuals from the 1990s, and they're of no use. Most of those APIs are gone or deprecated or lost. But those books, those books were a part of my programming life. That was how I worked.
Yeah, there's history there.
Mhm.
There's a lot of pages of experience and history. I would say many stories. I think yeah. I mean, I've been in the industry for I don't know 22 years, something like that. 22 between 22 to 25, I would say. And I started coding when I was I don't know 14 or something like that. Pascal and so forth, and yeah, these old days. By the way, I'm planning to do some talk, called something like 20 years of development or 25 years of development. I'm gonna go through, this different, programming languages. I think I have some code that I found the other day, and that, I came up with this idea and said like, oh, I'm gonna showcase this, this visual basic stuff, some Pascal stuff and some other COBOL stuff. I needed to migrate. One of my first challenges was to migrate a COBOL system to Visual Basic. So
Oh
it
my
was like,
God.
so
It's another area, let's
That's
say.
a glutton for. There's a glutton for punishment.
so it just I'm super happy to hear for feedback from you if you think that it could be interesting
Oh,
because
absolutely.
It would be
something fun,
definitely
right?
interesting.
It may be
Yes.
interesting to only like two or three of us in the crowd going, I remember.
Yeah, there you go. That would be the idea. Oh
Yes, and
yeah.
I think it would be interesting for people, those who haven't actually experienced this, to experience like what it was before the Stack Overflow development came in, right? Driven
Right.
development. And
Exactly. I think, as you pointed out, the new generations, that were, raised with, Stack Overflow. They were born and Stack Overflow was there, like, with a light, there and say for us
always
was
there.
yeah, the Bible of X, this 1,000 pages books. Oh God, yeah, all days.
You mentioned the book. I remember when I was doing Java, like in the earlier times, like I haven't actually been around for such a long time. So I was doing Java 1.6, I think that was the latest at that time. So obviously there was no Stack Overflow around that time. So if there was an error or something, I actually would have to go back and re-solidify my actual concepts to be able to fix the problem. So it's like a completely different approach. It's not like, oh, there's a
Totally.
solution, I can copy paste it, but rather like I need to understand it to move forward, to fix the bug.
And book collecting then became sort of a hobby. It wasn't just to answer those questions because you're probably familiar with the O'Reilly series
Yep.
with the animals on the front. And
Oh
I
yeah.
had Java in a nutshell and Unix in a nutshell, and those were my Bibles, and I carried them everywhere. Um, and I'm really glad that Ray has continued to turn around lots and lots of fantastic books, and that the idea of books are not dead. They're but
Of
uh
course. Of
but
course.
they're more for teaching than they are for
Yeah.
reference now.
Yeah. 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 I think I fully agree with you, and sometimes I feel like I need to revisit all my boxes and, bring them back to life, and just like, properly, store them, in a visible place. Because I mean, it's part of our life, right? I mean, we were raised, with all these huge books, we were raised with a way different way of programming and finding a solution, or like debugging, or putting logs, and now it's just like the first thing you do is just go to search engine, to, as we mentioned, Stack Overflow, and you get at least the idea. But in these old days, there was no internet even, like
Dial-up
and
modem.
I
yeah,
remember somebody
exactly.
asking me on an interview which search algorithm I use for something, or maybe it was a sort algorithm. And I said, you know, I could go into O notation right now, but I can get you to the Wikipedia page that has wonderful illustrations and talks about the pros and cons of each algorithm and where we need to consider what. And he's like, okay, you know what the wiki page is? Never mind. We'll just skip that.
Right, right. I have a funny story as well. Back in the days, getting back to these books and so forth, I was, you know, I think like with Windows 3.1, you had like WinZip, the first WinZip version, to zip files, right? I mean, to compact them. Um, and I remember like being at the university and said like, whoa, we are learning this compression algorithm from Huffman. Was very basic. You would never think, I mean, that, well, I mean, I want to create, a WinZip, and I call it, I don't remember, I don't remember how I call it, but it took me months, just to use this algorithm, understand. I mean, it was pretty simple actually. And I did a test, actually. I tried to zip, that was 200 files or something like that. And I was able to compact them, 0.001%. I mean, nothing, like it was reinventing the wheel. The file was pretty much the same size. It took 2 hours, and I only one in one file in comparison with WinZip, and it was like just like that. But this kind of projects which were about like reinventing the wheel,
Mhm.
um acquiring experience and so forth, and then you remember them. It's like, no worries. I mean, WinZip is not good. I will create my own one. So, and it's just the old days, right? With the book, as you both of you pointed out, checking that out, no internet, compiling, debugging, putting logs, trying yourself out, going back to the book, asking a friend, you would catch up with someone at the university. Hey, look, let's grab a computer here. I have this and that. Let's try to fix it together. I think like I still miss, part of that. It's part of our childhood, I would say, is when we were learning all this kind of stuff, right? Yeah,
I
but
think I think the
interesting.
human aspect is what is more fascinating, because this, like, we were not constantly on our computers trying to figure things out, but rather we were like mostly doing pair programming. If you like, there's no internet, if you're just sitting with your someone. And
Yeah,
also I think some of that also came through because you did it on your own. That had its own effect. I feel like accomplishment of being able to solve a problem which you were struggling with is something that I personally feel would have, or it would actually bring something back, which I'm not doing anymore, I guess, as much.
yeah,
So
right,
that would
right.
be nice.
But it's an amazing point. Yeah, yeah, definitely
Which
agree
is
with that.
again
Yeah.
going back why even if you're a manager or if you've become an advocate, you still need to touch the code from time to time. You need to have that tangible connection to the technology.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I trying to. Well, this is. I mean, when I studied, doing some Rust, because I wanted to do some other, Rust for me, it's a very particular language because of the new concepts introduced, by for people who are listening who are Rustaceans, or that's how you call a person, writing Rust, the concept of ownership, and how Rust, performs memory management, it's very interesting. But and then I wanted to pick a project, and I just said, what should I do? And I started, you know, writing a kernel. So probably it's the craziest idea.
I was gonna
But
say to do list app or something, but okay, kernel it is.
right. So you have no idea how much I've been researching, how much you get in the internet, and they say like, well, you're here because you want to develop a kernel. The first step. Don't think that you're gonna succeed. That's not. You're not gonna build up the new Linux kernel. But again, like this would be an advice to the audience, to whoever wants to get deep into stuff. I think like getting to know how things work under the hood, it gives you a lot of tools for problem solving, right? And for me, it's like I was lacking how you can uh, do some memory management, how, for example, the JVM implements the garbage collector, and how all these kind of things, how you handle interruptions between hardware. So of course, I did not get anywhere. I was able to just print out a hello world, but out of nowhere, with some assembler, just a tiny line of assembler, and then on top of that, a bit of Rust. So yeah, something that I'm kind of proud of that. I mean, it took me a month, just just to at least to understand, to have a basic understanding. Still a lot to learn, but these kind of things, you know, we have. I mean. Most of the time wherever I work, I try to encourage hacking time, right?
Yeah.
Just for learning purpose. I think this is very important. Your employer or your organization supports you, in terms of learning, and not only learning from your day-to-day work, but also learning out of creativity, out of innovation that you can do yourself, and tons of nice ideas come over, right? And I think I took some time to just, I don't know, once every 2 weeks, one day every 2 weeks, one day per sprint, whatever you want to do it. But um but it's interesting, that I don't know, I've never, it was something that I had in my bucket list. I'm still, probably I will share it soon, just for the sake of, look at, such a disaster I did, but I learned a lot. Yeah.
I think it's a very good point that you've raised, because like I think a lot of people, I think some of them who are also on the Raven Daily podcast, they mentioned this thing that you need to kind of like keep yourself up to date by doing something that you're not comfortable with, and that just keeps you sharp. You're gonna struggle with it for sure. You're not gonna make something really nice out of it, but the learning process in general keeps the, what do you call, like the brain functioning in a certain way, the logical way, the analytic way. And it's good to know that, like, because you already have such a like a good span of your experience in the tech industry. It's actually coming from you, it actually makes more sense because you have seen so many different scenarios and situations. So I hope
Yeah.
our listeners basically take this advice in general, and try to do something unique, and learn something obviously out of it.
I, I think thanks for the words. I mean, this is, to be honest, I mean, definitely agree with both of you with your words, with what we have been trying to encourage here, which is, learning, and, what you guys are doing also, within the podcast, which is sharing and, giving people like me the chance to express themselves, right? And I would say, like, in this specific situation, we always say, as engineers, or as IT people, never reinvent the wheel. But this is here is allowed, like, for learning purpose, for expanding your horizons, to deep you, in order to dip your toes in different waters, like, and learn out of that. Yeah, definitely something like to keep. But also, like, the other thing is, like, we need to prioritize our life. That's why I was, definitely, many people ask me, hey, how you create room for, doing this and that, and so forth. And I think it should be supported, but we need to find, a very, unique or good, work-life balance. I think that's the most important part. And that's why, your organization and should support you within all these things. Yeah, definitely.
I think
Cool.
I think we've got a good place to tie in there.
Right, huh?
Oh my God, this has been a lot of fun. Our next episode coming up in 2 weeks is going to feature Anise Davis, an Android Google development expert and currently the engineering director at Meetup. If you need to reach any of us, you can reach us on Twitter. Fernando, you can reach on Twitter at Fernando_Cejas. That's CEJAS. Nishant is Nisrulz, NISRULZ. I am Podcast Dru. 2 episodes after this one, we're going to have Kate Huston on. We had originally scheduled Kate earlier in the season. I'm looking forward to having her on. If you have any questions for Kate, you can, of course, email us at podcast@raywenderlich.com. That is going to wrap things up for this episode. Again, I would like to thank Fernando and Nishant. I am Dru Freeman, and we are going to send things back to the Emerald Castle. Ray, back to you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the raywenderlich.com podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to leave a rating on iTunes. See you next time.